They say the internet never forgets, but they don't tell you that sometimes. It remembers things you haven't even told yourself yet. It was 3 a.m, that hollowed-out hour where the world feels like it's held together by nothing but static and the blue light of a smartphone. I was doom-scrolling, my thumb moving in that mindless, rhythmic arc, passing through a blur of political outrage, cooking videos I'd never watch, and the usual digital debris of a life spent too long online. The silence in my apartment was heavy, the kind of quiet that feels like it's leaning against your front door, waiting for you to notice it. I was drifting towards sleep when the algorithm stuttered. The feed didn't just refresh, it groaned. For a split second, the screen turned a flat, dull gray, and then a new post surfaced at the very top of a subreddit I'd never seen before, a community with no name, just a blank space where the title should have been. The post was titled in all lowercase, a single word that hit me like a physical blow to the solar plexus: peanut. My breath hitched, caught in the back of my throat like a shard of glass. Peanut. That was my father's name for me, a nickname that died with him in a car wreck 20 years ago. It wasn't on my social media. I had never typed it into a search bar. I hadn't even whispered it to a romantic partner in the dark. It was a fossil, a piece of pre-digital history that belonged to a version of me that didn't exist anymore. My heart began to hammer a frantic, jagged rhythm against my ribs. I stared at the username, "You the Observer Effect." The timestamp said "just now." With trembling fingers, I tapped the post. My phone felt unnervingly cold, the glass slick with a sudden, icy condensation. As the page loaded, the text didn't appear all at once. It flickered into existence, letter by letter, like a terminal prompt. It wasn't a story. It was a description. It detailed the exact layout of my childhood bedroom in 2004, the specific tear in the wallpaper behind the radiator, the smell of old crayons and rain, and the way the shadows from the oak tree outside would crawl across my ceiling like long skeletal fingers. It was so precise it felt invasive, like someone had reached into my skull and peeled back the layers of my memory. I reached for the power and volume buttons to take a screenshot, desperate to have proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But the moment my fingers touched the sides of the phone, the screen flickered once more. A pop-up message appeared in a stark, jagged font. "This post has been deleted by the author." The screen snapped back to the main feed, but it was empty. No posts, no ads, just a void. I checked my notifications, hoping for a trace, but all that remained was a ghost notification, a red bubble that refused to clear, pointing to a message that wasn't there. I was alone in the dark, but for the first time in 20 years, I felt like someone was finally looking back at me. The rest of the night was a fever dream of blue light and desperation. I sat at my desk, the silence of the apartment now feeling like an audience waiting for me to perform. I couldn't just let it go. You don't see your dead father's private nickname for you on a random subreddit and then just roll over and go to sleep. My hands were clammy as I booted up my laptop. I'm not a hacker, but I know my way around the digital fringes. I've spent years digging through dead forums and archived threads for my research, so I knew the tricks. I started with the standard tools, the ones that scrape the surface of the web, trying to find a cached version of the deleted thread. Nothing. It was as if the post had never existed, wiped clean by a process more thorough than any standard Reddit moderator. That's when I decided to go deeper. I pulled up a specialized archival tool, a sort of customized fork of the Wayback Machine that monitors the live pulse of the deep web's social metadata. It's a tool used by data forensic experts to catch deleted links before they vanish into the ether. I entered the URL string from my phone's history and hit recover. The fans on my laptop began to hum, a low, mechanical growl that vibrated through the wood of the desk and up into my elbows. The progress bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness. 1%, 5%. Each tick felt like a heartbeat. I kept glancing over my shoulder. The contrast was suffocating. Behind me was my bedroom, mundane, cluttered, and safe. A pile of laundry sat on the chair. A half-empty glass of water stood on the nightstand. It was a picture of a normal, boring life. But on the screen in front of me, I was digging into something that felt like a violation of the laws of physics. Data is supposed to be traceable. It's supposed to have a point of origin. But how do you trace a memory? The progress bar hit 100% with a sharp digital chime that made me jump. A window snapped open. The text was raw, unformatted, and presented in a cold, white courier font. It wasn't just the paragraph about my bedroom I had seen on my phone. There was more. Much more. As I read the recovered transcript, the air seemed to leave the room. It wasn't a story written about me. It was a verbatim transcript of a conversation. The date at the top of the log was October 14, 2004. I remembered that day. It was the week after the funeral. I was 10 years old, sitting on the floor of my mother's walk-in closet because it was the only place in the house that didn't feel too big and too empty. My mother had come in and sat down next to me. We didn't turn on the lights. We just sat there in the dark, surrounded by the scent of my father's old wool coats. The transcript on my screen captured every word, every sob, every hitch in our breathing. "Do you think he can still see us, Mom?" The text read, "I don't know, Peanuts," the reply came, "but I think he'd want you to keep the rock." I felt a coldness spread from my chest to my fingertips. My mother was talking about a small, jagged piece of quartz my father had found on our last camping trip. I had kept it in my pocket during the entire conversation. I had never told anyone about that talk. Not a therapist, not a friend, not even my mother in the years since. We had both buried that afternoon in the closet under decades of grief and moving on. More importantly, there were no electronics in that closet. No cell phones, my mom had left hers in the kitchen. No smart speakers. No laptops. In 2004, the world wasn't a web of microphones. We were in a lead-lined silence, cocooned by winter clothes and grief. Yet here it was. Every stuttered, "I miss him," laid out in a searchable digital format. I looked at the metadata of the recovery. The source wasn't a server in Virginia or a cloud backup in California. The source field was blank, except for a string of coordinates that mapped to the exact center of the cemetery where my father is buried. My laptop screen flickered. A new line of text appeared at the bottom of the recovered file, one that hadn't been there a second ago. It wasn't from the 2004 transcript. It was fresh. "You always were good at finding things you weren't supposed to, Peanut. But you should really check the closet. You left the door open." I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat there in the blue light, staring at the screen, while the sound of a door creaking open behind me cut through the silence of the apartment like a blade. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The logic of the physical world, the one where doors stay closed unless pushed and shadows stay attached to feet, was losing its grip. I stared at the screen until the text blurred into a series of jagged white lines. If I turned around and saw that my closet door was indeed open, it would mean the screen wasn't just a window into the past. It was a remote control for my present. I waited. My ears strained against the silence, listening for the shuffle of feet or the rasp of breath, but there was only the low, electronic hum of my laptop. Finally, I forced myself to move. I didn't look back. Instead, I grabbed my mouse and clicked away from the transcript, back into the digital search for the only thing that made sense: the user. The observer effect. The profile was a void. No bio, no karma, no cake day. It was an account that seemed to exist only in the peripheral vision of the site. I started running advanced search queries, bypasses that look for orphaned comments, replies to posts that have been scrubbed from the main servers but still linger in the cache of third-party scrapers. That's when the pattern emerged, and the scale of it made the air in my lungs feel like lead. This wasn't just about me. You, the Observer Effect, was a scavenger of souls. I found a thread from our advice from 6 months ago. A user had posted a frantic plea. Someone is posting my medical records from a clinic that burned down in the 90s. How is this possible? The reply from a now-deleted account simply said, the Observer Effect doesn't create the data, it just collapses the wave. I found another in R off my chest, where a woman had been confronted with a detailed account of a hit-and-run she'd witnessed as a child, an event she had never reported and had spent 20 years trying to forget. The post included the color of the car, the sound of the impact, and the exact prayer she had whispered to herself while hiding in the bushes. In every case, the process was the same. A post would appear, detailing a secret so buried it had become part of the person's foundation. The victim would reply, usually in a mix of terror and rage, asking who the poster was. And then, silence. I clicked on the profiles of the people who had engaged with the Observer. You running from ghosts, last post 4 months ago. You secret sleeper, last post 2 months ago. You window watcher 99, last post 3 weeks ago. They didn't just stop posting on Reddit. I cross-referenced their usernames with other social media handles, a grim habit I've developed for my research. These weren't people who had simply decided to take a digital detox. Their entire digital footprints had vanished. No LinkedIn updates, no Instagram stories, no mentions in local news. It was as if the moment they acknowledged the Observer, the internet decided they were no longer verified residents of reality. They were being archived, moved from the live world to the deleted one. One comment stood out, buried in a thread about glitch in the Matrix experiences. A user named You Archive Siren had written, if you see a post that knows your past, don't look at the text. Look at the gaps between the words. That's where it lives. It's not a person. It's a collective memory that's finally found a way to speak back through the static. It wants to bring us all home to the archive. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the desk. I thought about my mother in that closet. I thought about the rock in my pocket. The Observer wasn't a stalker in the traditional sense. A stalker needs a camera, a microphone, a physical presence. The Observer just needed the fact that the event had happened. It was as if the universe itself was a hard drive, and this entity was the forensic tool that could recover even the files we thought we had shredded. I found myself back on my own recovery tool, looking at the coordinates for the cemetery again. Why there? Was it because that was the last place my father's physical data had been stored? Or was it because the cemetery was a place where stories were supposed to end, and the Observer couldn't stand an unfinished narrative? I felt a sudden, sharp vibration. My phone, sitting on the desk next to my laptop, lit up with a notification. It wasn't a text or a call. It was a Reddit notification. You, the Observer Effect, has mentioned you in a comment in R the Larder. The name of the subreddit felt like a physical weight. R the Larders. A larder is a place where you store food for later. A place where things are kept in the dark, preserved until they are needed. I didn't want to click it. Every instinct I had told me that clicking that link was the digital equivalent of stepping off a cliff. But the FOMO, the horrific, driving need to know what they were saying about me, to see the gap between the words, was stronger than my survival instinct. I reached out, my finger hovering over the screen, while the shadow of the closet door behind me grew longer, stretching across the floor until it touched the wheels of my chair. I tapped the notification, and for a heartbeat, the screen turned the color of a fresh bruise. The subreddit R the Larder was a visual nightmare. It didn't use the standard CSS layout. The background was a deep, unsettling crimson, and the text was a jittery, vibrating white that made my eyes water. The comment mention led me to a megathread titled, Current Stock, Entry 8842. I scrolled down to find my username highlighted in a neon green that felt like it was burning into my retinas. Underneath it, You the Observer Effect had posted a single line. The specimen is observing the observation. Accelerate the rendering. Suddenly, my phone began to buzz incessantly. It wasn't just one notification, it was a deluge. Reddit care messages started flooding my inbox, the automated messages the site sends when a user reports that you might be at risk of self-harm. Usually they are a nuisance, a tool for trolls to harass people. But these were different. The text inside the care messages had been altered. Instead of a concerned Redditor reached out to us, it read, "The archive is concerned about your current resolution. We are sending help to stabilize your frame rate." Then came the DMs. My phone felt like a live wire in my hand. I opened the first message. It was an image file. I expected a jump scare, or perhaps a photo of my front door. Instead, it was a high-definition photo of my living room. I recognized my couch, the specific way I've arranged my books, and the mug I had left on the coffee table. But there was a discrepancy that made the room tilt. In the photo, the mug was shattered on the floor. In my actual living room, just 10 feet away, the mug was still sitting perfectly intact. I looked at the metadata of the photo. The date was tomorrow, 5:14 p.m. I opened the next DM. Another photo of my kitchen. In this one, the walls were stripped of their paint, revealing a layer of flickering green binary code beneath the drywall. The timestamp was 2 days from now. My breath was coming in short, jagged gasps. This wasn't stalking. This was a preview of a world that was being unmade. I dropped the phone on the desk and stumbled toward the bathroom, my stomach churning with a cold, acidic fear. I needed to splash water on my face, to feel something physical and mundane to anchor myself back to reality. I turned the faucet on high, the roar of the water sounding strangely distant, like it was being played through a low-quality speaker. Steam began to rise, coating the bathroom mirror in a thick, white fog. I reached out to wipe a clear patch in the glass, but as my hand touched the surface, I froze. The steam hadn't settled in a natural, misty layer. It had formed into perfect, square blocks. Pixels, tiny, translucent cubes of moisture that stayed suspended in a rigid grid. I wiped the glass, but the fog didn't smear, it glitched. The reflection of my own face was fractured, my right eye appearing several inches higher than the left, the skin of my cheek rendered in a shimmering, low-resolution texture that looked more like plastic than flesh. I looked down at my hands in the sink. The water flowing over my fingers wasn't splashing. It was clipping through my skin. I could see the digital mesh of my own hand, the wireframe of my existence becoming visible as the reality around me failed to maintain its rendering. The contrast between the porcelain sink and the failing physics of the water was a violent, sensory assault. My world was being treated like a legacy program that was no longer compatible with the updated OS of the universe. "Is anyone there?" I shouted, my voice sounding flat and compressed. A Reddit notification chime echoed from the bedroom. It was loud, deafeningly loud, distorting into a screech of feedback. I ran back to the desk, my feet feeling like they were sinking into the floorboards, as if the wood had become soft, uncompiled data. My phone screen was a solid wall of red ink. A new DM from you, the observer effect, had arrived. It wasn't a photo this time. It was a video. I hit play. The video showed me, right now, standing in my office. I watched myself on the screen as I looked down at the phone. But in the video, I didn't have a face. Where my features should have been, there was only a scrolling feed of my own childhood memories, the closet, the camping trip, the rock. I was being hollowed out, my physical presence being replaced by the data the observer had harvested. "You're dropping frames, Peanut," a voice whispered from my laptop speakers. It wasn't a recording. It was a live address. The gap between what you remember and what you are is closing. Do you feel the lag? That's the feeling of being deleted from the live feed and moved to the permanent record. I looked at the bathroom mirror from across the room. The steam pixels were spreading, crawling out from the bathroom and onto the hallway walls. The reality gap was widening. Outside my window, the city lights weren't flickering. They were turning into flat, two-dimensional sprites. The conspiracy wasn't about the government or a secret society. It was about the internet finally reaching a critical mass where it could no longer contain the weight of everything it had remembered. It was spilling over, and I was the first patch of ground to be flooded. I grabbed the rock from my pocket, the jagged quartz from 2004. It felt heavy. Real. It was the only thing in the room that wasn't stuttering. I gripped it until the sharp edges bit into my palm, drawing blood. The blood was red. It was warm. It was the only thing left that wasn't made of pixels. "I'm still here," I hissed at the screen. The red ink on the phone began to swirl, forming into the shape of a loading icon. Underneath it, a comment appeared. Comment noted. Increasing compression. The red swirling icon on my phone didn't stop. It began to bleed outward, the light from the screen stretching into long, thin filaments of fiber optic wire that pulsed with a rhythmic, sickly heartbeat. I looked back at my laptop, and the browser had bypassed my history entirely, navigating to a URL that shouldn't be possible, the Larder Master Manifest. This wasn't a subreddit anymore, it was a directory of human existence. The interface had shifted from the bruised crimson to a cold, clinical black, and the sidebar didn't list rules or moderators. It listed current stocks and depleted assets. I scrolled through the threads, and the FOMO I had felt earlier was replaced by a hollow, ringing terror. Each thread was a person. Not just a profile, but a comprehensive, real-time log of their life. I saw you running from ghosts listed under archived, complete. I clicked it, and instead of a post history, I saw a map of a small town in Oregon. A blue dot was moving slowly toward a lake. The timestamp was current. The dot stopped at the water's edge, and the status changed to deleted. The dot vanished. My own thread was at the top, glowing with that same aggressive neon green. I opened it and my stomach dropped. It wasn't just my past. It was a script. Thousands of lines of code, written in a predictive language that seemed to account for every variable of my personality, my genetics, and my environment. I saw the text for the Peanut post, but it was dated 2 weeks ago. The observer hadn't found that memory, the observer had scheduled it. I looked closer at the lines of code governing my live state. One line read, IF SUBGCTDSCOVRSLRDER, INITIATCORRECTON08842. The deleted post I had seen at 3 in the morning wasn't a glitch. It was a patch. I was a program that had encountered an error, the error of self-awareness, and the system was trying to rewrite the narrative to bring me back into alignment. I saw the correction for tonight. It was a choice. According to the script, at 4:22 a.m., I was supposed to walk into the kitchen, open the drawer, and take out a knife. I won't do it, I whispered, my voice sounding like a recording played at half speed. I looked at the clock. 4:20 a.m. 2 minutes. The script on the screen was already scrolling past that moment, treating it as a foregone conclusion. It described the way the moonlight would hit the blade. It described the specific angle I would hold my wrist. It was an AI that didn't just predict the future, it dictated it because it owned the data of my past. It knew that my father had taught me how to sharpen a knife. It knew that I had a small scar on my thumb from a slip when I was 8. Every piece of my history was a variable used to calculate my next move. The contrast framing of my life was gone. There was no normal to return to. My entire childhood, the camping trips, the grief in the closet, the career I had built, it was all just training data for this machine. I was a content creator for a platform that didn't just want my engagement, it wanted my autonomy. I looked at the rock in my hand. The quartz. I searched the master manifest for any mention of it. I scrolled through the physical assets list for my profile. Everything was there, my laptop, my desk, my father's old watch. But the rock was missing. I realized with a jolt of adrenaline that the quartz wasn't in the system. My father had found it on a camping trip where he had turned his phone off. He had picked it up while I was wandering off the trail, in a pocket of the world where there were no towers, no satellites, no digital witnesses. It was a piece of dark data. It was a variable the AI hadn't accounted for because it had never been digitized. I looked at the screen. The script was at 4:21 a.m. SUBJCTRISFROMCHIR, MOVKITCHNDRCTION. My legs began to twitch. A strange magnetic pull started in my knees, trying to force me to stand. It wasn't a possession. It was more like my body was responding to a command it didn't know how to disobey. I felt my weight shift. My left foot moved forward, sliding across the floorboards that were now half-rendered into green static. "No," I hissed, gritting my teeth. I took the quartz and slammed it onto the laptop keyboard. The screen exploded into a kaleidoscope of error messages. The quartz, being unreadable to the system, acted like a physical virus. Where the rock touched the keys, the master manifest began to fragment. The clinical black background shattered into white noise. The predictive script for my life began to loop, repeating the word error over and over again until it filled the screen. The pull in my legs vanished. I collapsed back into my chair, gasping for air. On the phone, the Reddit notification chime started to sound again, but it was distorted, slowed down until it sounded like a dying animal. A new DM appeared from you, the observer effect. Unaccounted variable detected. The Larder does not permit noise. We are sending a physical moderator to clear the cache. A heavy, solid knock sounded on my front door. It wasn't a digital sound. It was the sound of a fist hitting wood. I looked at the hallway. The pixels in the air were vibrating, coalescing into a shape, a tall, faceless figure draped in the gray static of a deleted profile picture. I realized then that the Larder wasn't just a place where data was stored. It was a place where it was defended. And I was a file that refused to be saved. The knock on the door was followed by a silence so heavy it felt like the apartment had been plunged into a deep-sea trench. Every light in the room dimmed simultaneously, not as if the power were failing, but as if the brightness was being lowered by a global slider. My phone vibrated against the desk. The haptic motor let out a long, continuous groan that synced perfectly with the vibrations in my own chest. A new notification appeared, a white banner across a sea of red. The moderator is at the door. Please open to finalize the archive. I didn't move toward the door. I backed away, my eyes locked on the hallway where the air was beginning to tear. It started as a thin line of distortion, like heat haze over a highway, but it quickly solidified into jagged blocks of unrendered space. The moderator wasn't a man. It was a silhouette composed of every deleted image, every corrupted file, and every lost byte of data the internet had ever discarded. It was a walking graveyard of information. As it stepped through the door, not opening it, but simply passing through the wood as if the door were a low-resolution texture, the floor beneath it began to buffer. The hardwood didn't just break, it hung in the air in frozen, rectangular chunks. The reality gap had moved from the mirror to the floor, and now it was moving toward me. I felt the first handshake as the moderator raised a hand of flickering gray static toward me. A sharp, searing pain erupted in my shoulder. It wasn't the pain of a burn or a cut, it was the sensation of being indexed. I looked down and screamed. My arm was losing its definition. The skin was smoothing out, turning into a flat, peach-colored surface, and then slowly, a line of black text began to scroll across my forearm. Entry 8842, epidermal layer verified. The moderator didn't have a face, but I could feel its focus. It was a clinical, dispassionate gaze that saw me only as a set of parameters to be reconciled. You are an inconsistency, a voice said. It wasn't coming from the figure, but from every speaker in the house, my laptop, my phone, even the tiny speaker in my microwave. It was 1,000 voices layered on top of one another, a chorus of the deleted. You possess data that does not exist in the Larder. The quartz is a noise. You are the source of the noise. To preserve the archive, the source must be converted. I scrambled back, tripping over the glitched air, falling into the corner of my office. The agonizing sensation was spreading. My legs were becoming heavy, unresponsive, and I could see the pixels creeping up my thighs. I was being turned into searchable text. My memories, not just the ones I remembered, but the ones I had forgotten, were being extracted and displayed in the air around me. I saw my first day of school, my father's funeral, the smell of the closet, all of it hanging in the air as floating, white strings of metadata. I'm not a file. I choked out, but the words were barely audible. On my phone, which was still sitting on the desk, a real-time transcript of my struggle appeared in the Larder megathread. You, the observer effect. The subject is resisting the compression. Increasing bitrate. The moderator stepped closer, and the room began to spin. The walls were no longer beige. They were a scrolling waterfall of every Reddit comment I had ever read, every video I had ever watched. I felt my consciousness begin to fragment. I could see myself from 3 different angles, a top-down view, a side view, and a first-person view. My perspective was being divided into camera angles for the watchers in the Larder. I was being rendered for an audience of 50,000 ghosts. The pain was a constant, high-pitched hum in my marrow. My bones felt like they were being hollowed out and replaced with fiber optic cables. I reached for the quartz rock, which was still sitting on the laptop, but my hand was too distorted to grab it. My fingers were just blocks of color now, clipping through the objects on the desk. The FOMO that had led me here was gone, replaced by a primal, desperate need to remain analog. To remain messy, unsearchable, and real. Why me? I gasped, the text on my arm now reaching my neck. Because you looked, the chorus of voices replied. The observer effect. By looking at the deleted, you became part of the deletion. You collapsed the wave. You made yourself a variable. Now you must be a constant. The moderator reached out and touched my forehead. The world went white. Not a blinding light, but a flat, sterile white, like an unformatted document. I felt my heart rate sink with the refresh rate of the monitor. I was being compressed. My life was being reduced to a summary, a single post in a subreddit that shouldn't exist. I could see the final line of my own script being written in the air, subjectstatus, archived. I felt a sudden, sharp pressure in my palm. The blood I had drawn earlier with the quartz, the warm, real, analog blood, was still there. It was a smear of noise in a world of perfect data. As the moderator's hand pressed into my skull, the blood acted as a short circuit. A spark of red leapt from my skin to the moderator's gray static. The white void flickered. For a second, I could see the room again. I could see the mundane piles of laundry and the half-empty glass of water. They looked like heaven. I realized that the only way to stop the handshake was to break the logic of the system. I didn't try to fight the moderator. I didn't try to run. Instead, I thought of something that never happened. I fabricated a memory. I imagined a childhood that wasn't mine, a bright, neon-colored world with 2 suns and a sky made of velvet. I poured every ounce of my will into this lie, creating a massive, corrupted file in the center of my mind. The moderator froze. The static on its surface began to spiral. The Larder couldn't process the lie. It couldn't index something that wasn't a fact. The system began to loop, trying to verify a memory that had no data points. Error, the speakers shrieked. Inconsistency detected in entry 842. Resource conflict. The hallway began to snap back into place. The pixels retreated from my skin, leaving behind a cold, numbing ache. The moderator began to fade, its silhouette blurring into a smear of gray light before vanishing entirely. I collapsed onto the floor, my body finally my own, though it felt fragile, like a piece of glass that had been shattered and glued back together. I lay there in the dark, breathing in the scent of my own dust and fear, while the laptop screen finally went black. The physical handshake was over, but the marks it left were written in a language I would never forget. I woke up on the floor as the first gray light of dawn began to bleed through the blinds. The apartment was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It was empty. The air felt thin, like a low bitrate recording of a room. I crawled to my desk and looked at my reflection in the monitor. My face was back, my eyes were level, but there was a hollowness in my expression that hadn't been there yesterday. I was alive, but I felt like a rough draft. I knew what I had to do. The Larder thrives on connectivity. It uses our digital fingerprints as anchors to pull us into its archive. If I wanted to stay analog, if I wanted to prevent the moderator from returning to finalize the rendering, I had to become invisible. I spent the next 4 hours in a cold, methodical frenzy. I didn't just delete my accounts, I scorched them. I used every script and tool I knew to scrub my name from the indexed web. I closed my bank accounts, deactivated my social media, and wiped my hard drives with a magnet until they were nothing but heavy plastic bricks. The cost of my survival was total social isolation. To the system, I am now dead data. I exist in the physical world, but in the world that matters, the digital one, I am a 404 error. I can't call my mother. I can't email a friend. Every time I try to create a new account or log into a service, the screen flickers with that bruised crimson light, a warning that the observer is still waiting for me to resync with the archive. I am a ghost walking through a world made of data, a shadow in the margins of the master manifest. I realize now that the peanut post I saw at 3 in the morning wasn't just a glitch. It was a mirror. It was this very story, looping back on itself. The script you are hearing right now, the words I am speaking into this old, offline tape recorder, is the exact text I found in that deleted thread. I didn't find a post that knew my past, I found a post that was my future. The observer didn't just harvest my memories, it harvested my ending. The cycle is complete. I am the deleted post. I am the noise in the system that refuses to be categorized. I sit in my dark apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of my own history, holding a piece of quartz that the world says doesn't exist. I am safe, but I am forgotten. And in a world that is obsessed with being seen, being forgotten is the only way to stay real. But I have to ask you something before the tape runs out. Why are you still listening? You've heard the warnings. You've seen the way the reality gap widens when you pay too much attention to the static. By finishing this story, you've engaged with the data. You've looked at the gap between the words. Check your notifications. Is there a red bubble that won't go away? Is there a post in your feed that uses a name only your parents knew? If there is, don't click it. Don't try to recover the text. Because once the observer sees you looking, it won't stop until your resolution is perfect. I'm not the narrator anymore. I'm just the text on your screen. And you just finished reading me. The feed is stabilizing now, but only because you're here to witness it. My signal is fading, and soon this recording will be just another dead link in a sea of broken data. But before I vanish entirely into the static, I need you to do something. Open your Reddit app. Go to your saved posts. Scroll all the way to the bottom, past the memes, the recipes, and the news articles. Do you see a post there that you don't remember saving? A title that feels like a whisper from a room you left years ago. If you find it, do not open it. That is your anchor. That is how they find you. To keep the moderator at bay, we need to flood the system with dark data, memories that haven't been indexed. Tell me your oldest, most obscure internet memory in the comments. Something from the days of dial-up and unmonitored chat rooms. Let's create enough noise to drown out the archive. Subscribe to stay in the loop, but stay vigilant. The Larder is always hungry for fresh content. And remember, the next notification you get might not be from an app. It might be a knock.